clearly been a benefit to that, but then as others have said, their organizations didn't necessarily play as much heed to it as they should have, and now hindsight's told them that it was probably it was a call out. So what ASCI is looking to do, it's still planning with hope, I suppose, Peter, I'll say in jest, but we had planned for an original conference, a real live, in-person conference originally in September. It was already, the planning committee was all in place by February, March. So the start of the year it had all been assembled. That was then deferred back to November. That was cancelled. So now we're working on
It will happen.
Well, look, by hook or by crook, Peter. So we're planning with all the best intent at the moment that I think it's mid-Feb. The date escapes me now off the top of my head, but a Sydney-based conference would happen, and we have a committee behind this. There's a lot of resources gone into supporting the development of a conference program.
Yeah.
So, touch wood, we may be able to deliver a conference in February, but worst case is that if we need to defer again or look at an alternative option around a conference process, it's really about trying to ensure that we are maintaining relativity to what's going on in the current marketplace and having a conference which really helps people to take some value from it and learnings back into their organizations.
Yeah, look, and I mean, that's a great interest group as well, isn't it? Sales and operation, SNOP, sales and operations planning, or integrated business planning, IPB. It's such a powerful tool, but when markets and supply chains are getting shaken around like they are at the moment, it's probably never ever been so important. So I think it's a great topic to be focused on as over the next 12 months, most definitely. Yeah. And I agree with you. Organizations generally underestimate the power of doing that really well. We do see a lot of that ourselves.
Yeah, and I think, Peter, on that point, the whole resilience piece, and I come back to that from an executive perspective too, because we've spoken about this in the past, that the resilience of the executive to stay firm or stay committed to, for the example of this, SNOP, IBP, has those that have committed and stayed strong to it, they've been able to deliver results that others who didn't commit to or looked at other priorities have been more greatly impacted.
Yeah, I think, we definitely see that globally, kind of consistently, but never so much more than at the moment. And hats off to you that the organization you're involved in is helping companies with that process. But Brenda, maybe just to close out here,
yes.
If you think of you're managing you're a supply chain professional, you've spent a lot of time being qualified and understanding what is a very complex discipline, and you're trying to manage your career going forward. How can ASCI, the Australian Supply Chain Institute, help with that career management process?
Yeah. So there's probably a few elements to my answer here, Peter. And I do, I have this conversation regularly with people who may not necessarily be engaged with ASCI for one reason or another. So I'll often say to them, look, if you have got the passion for your career, which I no doubt majority of people in supply chain have, because you wouldn't stay in it if you weren't, because of the challenges of it. Yeah. Do yourself a favor by looking at registration for just even affiliate membership or whatever, membership level you might be able to afford. Think about it as an investment in, if you were thinking about it selfishly, what can I get out of this? What can I learn that can be advantage to me in my role, to do my role better, or to help me hook onto something and maybe connect with others in a network, like-minded people, like-minded groups, such as SNOP, IBP as an example. Because the whole intent of ASCI is to really provide a diversity of topics that will cover pretty much the spectrum of supply chain, and that goes into areas of transport, logistics, risk management, so on.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would say to people, and this is at the senior level, there's many a conversation I have, Peter, with heads of supply chain directors, GM supply chains and the like, is they're aware of it. And I would say, look, what's the value you can add to your own people? Because given that we all recognize that people are your most important asset, apart from the technology and the tools and everything else that you use, people are the ones that will make it happen for you. And quite often they say, oh, look, we weren't aware of, what it might involve. And under, if you like, a corporate type membership, they can join, and, it's all about what funding they might be able to get to support that. But then it helps look at the group of people they may manage in that supply chain, of giving some people an accountability amongst their team, but as a leader as well. Like in SNOP, you are part of the presentations. You don't expect others just to be there and you not to turn up. So it's about leading by example, by getting people involved. And from companies' perspective, the other thing we would suggest is that, I say this to people, we're aware of some of the really challenging times that people have been through, and still going through over this period. And I would invite some of these key supply chain leaders to participate in a discussion or a forum or a webinar. And some of them, because they're pretty humble folk, may decline initially, but I say, look, it's a great piece of it's a great information sharing opportunity if you're willing or have the capacity to do so, because it gives others in industry a sense of how you got through this and what you did that, really helped, and what are some lessons learned and so on. And I think then it shows by example within that organization how others within their team can start to contribute. The other thing I would say, Peter, is I do speak to people regularly about whether they may be interested in being part of the committee in the future.
Right.
When time may allow, because we are a flexible committee in the sense that people will have worked peaks and troughs, and sometimes people are just really busy and not able to contribute as much, and that's fine, because we expect as a voluntary basis. But there's people who like, I suppose there's a common theme to people who become involved more voluntarily, is there's an element of contribution where people like to share their experiences with others, where they can add value to others in this, under the umbrella of ASCI, and help with networking. And I would say the other thing that can add value is, and I've helped people on this journey too, people who are in the job market. I said, if you become part of ASCI, it's a much easier way of connecting to others who are part of ASCI. And you just never know when opportunities come up or become networked that would never be advertised.
Right.
So, it's one of those, I won't say secret societies, but it becomes, a recognition, oh, you're part of ASCI, so therefore you've obviously got a relatively strong interest / experience in supply chain, and you've got a passion that passion enough that you want to be involved, depending on how much time you want to put in or how much time you want to network. So a lot of my role, to be fair, Peter, is I connect people within ASCI, introduce somebody to another person. They may then go, develop their own connection outside of that. And, sometimes it's more information sharing or lessons learned, which is what I hear a lot of these days. People swap stories about how they work through different challenges and how they can help each other. Another that we're looking at doing, but it will take a little bit more time to develop, and it wasn't the priority with COVID year, but around a mentor-mentee program.
Right.
Where, you get those who like to contribute. They're at a stage of career where they've probably led, mentored, managed various people over their years, but have a genuine passion for helping others in their career journeys, and developing some sort of program where we can match and align people where there could be a common outcome.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot of benefits hidden away in all of that. And certainly for budding supply chain professionals out there, it certainly would encourage people to get in contact with you and the organization. And there's clearly a lot of benefits to come out of that, both at a personal level and for the organizations that the individuals involved with, from what you're saying here.
Yeah, and I think, what we've seen is that there's a consistency when we now do the webinars, and they happen now weekly, Peter. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. pretty much is bookmarked for people if they want to attend a webinar. It's really up to the content that they want to, if they wish to participate, or if it's of value to them. But we, ASCI needs to cater for a wider audience nationally across 4 chapters, but it's always there for people. And I think it's just an easy touch point, for people to drop in, listen to. You can listen to the recordings afterwards, download them and consume them in your own time. But I as a chapter lead for it, I just see the benefits and I point people then. I often have the discussion, Peter, we talked about education earlier. There's a lot of people in supply chain that we recognize are very talented in what they do and their career history, but may not have acquired some of the qualifications along the way. So as I say to people, it might be the difference in you securing your next supply chain role could be the difference between a supply chain qualification over if it's determining between yourself and another candidate. It could be down to a qualification. And if you, under the guise of ASCI with the sort of framework of courses, programs, you can probably determine whether you have got the time, resource and funding to undertake a program, and it can just start to rebuild a pathway for you.
So Brendan, just closing out, if people want to find out more about ASCI, what do they do?
Yes, so there's a simple website tag, which is asci.org.au. So that will get you to the primary website. It's been more recently updated, so it's pretty contemporary. If you ever need any information, you can always, there's one key contact person with ASCI called Monique Fennick, and she looks after a lot of inquiries and so on. But if people are interested, as a course of listening to this discussion, please, you can make contact with me. LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'll go back to what we talked about earlier, Peter.
Sure.
About where people typically are most easily found these days. So if people want to look me up on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'd only be more than happy to share more details with them, or listen to, how I can add value, if it's just a bit of career advice or pointing them in the direction of ASCI if that's where they feel that it's worthwhile.